The early morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac as Technical Sergeant Sarah Mitchell knelt beside the massive A-10 Thunderbolt II, affectionately known as the Warthog by those who flew and maintained them. Her nimble fingers worked methodically on the GAU-8 Avenger cannon that protruded from the aircraft's nose like a metal snout. This 30mm cannon was the A-10's defining feature, a 7-barrel beast capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute, decimating tanks and armored vehicles with ease. Sarah wiped sweat from her brow, leaving a smudge of grease across her forehead. At 32, she was one of the most experienced weapons specialists at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. The early September heat was already building, promising another scorching day. "Hey, Mitchell. Colonel wants that bird ready by 1300 hours. Staff Sergeant Ryan Dawson called out as he passed, not bothering to stop and help. "It'll be ready," Sarah replied without looking up. 6 years at this base, and some of the guys still treated her like she was fresh out of technical school. She had long ago stopped trying to prove herself with words, her work spoke for itself. Sarah had grown up in a small town in eastern Tennessee, the daughter of a Marine and a schoolteacher. Her older brother Michael had joined the Air Force right after high school, and Sarah had followed in his footsteps 4 years later. Michael had been her hero, her protector, and her inspiration. Had been, past tense. The memory of the uniformed officers at her mother's door 5 years ago still made her stomach clench. "That cannon giving you trouble, Mitchell?" The voice came from behind her, deep and unfamiliar. Sarah turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in a Navy uniform. His weathered face suggested years of sun exposure, and his steady gaze evaluated everything around him with practiced precision. A visitor from another branch wasn't unusual, but something about this man put Sarah on alert. "No, sir," she replied, standing up and wiping her hands on a rag. "Just routine maintenance." "Lieutenant Commander Jack Reynolds," he said, extending his hand. "Navy SEAL. I'm here for a joint training exercise." Sarah shook his hand firmly. "Technical Sergeant Sarah Mitchell. Weapons Specialist." "You're doing God's work," Reynolds said, nodding at the A-10. "Saved my team's bacon more than once in Afghanistan. The sound of that cannon overhead is the sweetest thing in the world when you're pinned down." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "The pilots get all the glory, but we keep them flying." Reynolds studied her work. "You've got a good touch with her. Most people don't appreciate how finicky these systems can be." "Been working on them for 8 years now," Sarah said. His knowledge surprised her. Most Navy personnel didn't know much about Air Force aircraft specifics. "Mind if I watch for a bit?" Reynolds asked. "Waiting for my meeting with Colonel Harrington." "Suit yourself," Sarah replied, kneeling back down to continue her work. She was used to being observed, though usually it was by superiors looking for mistakes. As Sarah reached up to adjust a component, her sleeve pulled back, revealing a simple bracelet on her wrist. It was nothing fancy, just a braided cord with a small metal plate. Reynolds's eyes locked onto it, and his expression changed instantly. "Where did you get that bracelet?" he asked, his voice suddenly tense. Sarah instinctively covered it with her other hand. "It was my brother's," she said cautiously. "Why?" Reynolds swallowed hard, his face now drained of color. "Your brother, what was his name?" "Michael Mitchell. Technical sergeant, like me," Sarah said, standing up again. "He was killed in action 5 years ago." Reynolds looked as though he'd seen a ghost. "Mitchell, from the Kandahar operation?" Now it was Sarah's turn to be shocked. "You knew my brother?" Before Reynolds could answer, a young airman approached them. "Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. Colonel Harrington can see you now, sir." Reynolds nodded distractedly. "We need to talk," he said quietly to Sarah. "After your shift. It's important." As he walked away, Sarah felt her heart pounding. For 5 years, she'd been told that her brother died when his transport was hit by an IED. The official report had been vague on details: classified operation, minimal survivors, body unrecoverable. Her family had received a flag, condolences, and a medal awarded posthumously. But the look on Reynolds's face told her there was more to the story, much more. Sarah tried to focus on her work, but her mind raced. The bracelet had been a gift from her to Michael before his last deployment, a simple cord she had braided herself with a metal plate engraved with their childhood motto, "Always forward, never back." Michael's personal effects had been returned to the family after his death, the bracelet among them. She had worn it every day since. At the end of her shift, Sarah cleaned up and changed into her Air Force blues. She had just stepped outside the hangar when she spotted Reynolds waiting near the parking lot. "Sergeant Mitchell," he said, his voice low. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Sarah hesitated. "The Copper Cactus," she suggested. "It's a quiet place off base." Reynolds nodded. "I'll follow you." 20 minutes later, they sat in a corner booth of the nearly empty restaurant. Reynolds looked even more unsettled than before, fidgeting with his water glass. "Whatever you're about to tell me," Sarah said, "just say it straight. I've spent 5 years wondering what really happened to my brother." Reynolds took a deep breath. "The official story about your brother's death, it's not accurate." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "I figured as much. So what's the truth?" "First, I need to know exactly how you came to have that bracelet," Reynolds said. "I made it for him," Sarah replied, touching it reflexively. "Before his last deployment. It came back with his things." Reynolds's brow furrowed. "That's not possible," he said. "Your brother wasn't wearing that bracelet when I last saw him." "And when was that?" Sarah demanded, leaning forward. "The night of the operation in Kandahar," Reynolds said. "My SEAL team was providing support for a classified Air Force mission. Your brother was one of the technical specialists on the ground." Sarah processed this information. "So you were there when he died?" Reynolds glanced around the restaurant, then lowered his voice further. "Sarah, according to all official records, 8 men died that night, including your brother. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that the body count wasn't right." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I saw your brother after the explosion. He was injured, but alive when our team pulled out." Reynolds's gaze was intense. "And he definitely wasn't wearing that bracelet." Sarah felt dizzy. "So where did this come from? And if he didn't die in the explosion, what happened to him?" "That's what I need to figure out," Reynolds said. "Because either someone went to great lengths to fake your brother's death, or he trailed off. Or what?" Sarah pressed. "Or someone is going to a lot of trouble to make sure the truth never comes out," Reynolds finished. "And the fact that you have that bracelet means you might be in danger too." Sarah sat back, stunned. "Why would anyone do this? Michael was just a tech sergeant like me." "Your brother was a lot more than just anything," Reynolds said grimly. "And I think it's time you learned exactly what mission he was really on that night." As Reynolds began to explain, Sarah felt her world tilting on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about her brother's death was a lie. And the truth, it seemed, was far more dangerous than she could have imagined. What neither of them noticed was the man sitting 2 booths away, pretending to read a newspaper while his phone silently recorded their entire conversation. The Copper Cactus grew quieter as the afternoon crowd thinned out. Sarah stared at the worn wooden table, trying to process what Lieutenant Commander Reynolds had just told her. "So you're saying my brother was part of a secret team?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "Not just a regular technical sergeant?" Reynolds nodded. "On paper, he was weapons maintenance, just like you. But your brother had skills that put him on the radar of some specialized units. He could spot patterns others missed, solve technical problems under pressure. Made him perfect for certain, unofficial operations." Sarah's fingers traced the metal plate on her bracelet. "And this operation in Kandahar, what was it really about?" Intelligence indicated that a high-value target was using an abandoned manufacturing facility as a meeting place, Reynolds explained. Your brother was there to identify and disable specific equipment before our team moved in. What kind of equipment? Reynolds hesitated. The kind that could be modified to deliver biological agents. Sarah felt a chill. Biological weapons? In Afghanistan? Not local, Reynolds clarified. Foreign scientists using the chaos of war as cover. Our mission was to capture them and destroy their research. And something went wrong, Sarah guessed. Very wrong, Reynolds confirmed, his face grim. We had bad intel. The facility was more heavily guarded than expected. We lost communication with your brother's team, then heard an explosion. By the time my squad reached the site, it was chaos. We found survivors, including your brother, but we were ordered to evacuate immediately. The official report later listed everyone on your brother's team as Kia. Sarah struggled to maintain her composure. So my brother didn't die that night. What happened to him? That's what I can't figure out, Reynolds admitted. He was injured but alive when we evacuated. I personally helped load him onto the helicopter. The next thing I heard, he was declared dead along with everyone else on his team. And no one questioned this? Sarah asked incredulously. It was a classified operation. The details were compartmentalized. My team was debriefed separately, told that one of the evacuees had died en route. We were shipped out to another location the next day. Reynolds leaned forward. I didn't even know your brother's name until today. Just his call sign, Tinker. Sarah's breath caught. It had been their father's nickname for Michael, for his ability to fix anything. No one outside the family would have known that. But this bracelet, you recognized it, Sarah said. Reynolds nodded. Because it's identical to these. He pulled up his sleeve to reveal a similar bracelet, then reached into his pocket and placed another on the table. We all had them. Every member of the Joint Task Force. Sarah picked up the spare bracelet, examining it closely. The metal plate was similar to hers, but instead of her family motto, it bore a series of numbers and letters. Identification and blood type, Reynolds explained. In case conventional ID was compromised. Your brother should have been wearing one like this, not the personal one you made him. Sarah's mind was racing. So either someone switched the bracelets after he was evacuated. Or someone wants people to believe your brother died that night when he didn't, Reynolds finished. The question is why? Sarah thought back to the weeks after she'd received the news of Michael's death. There was a man who came to the funeral, she recalled slowly. He said he worked with Michael. Gray-haired, expensive suit. He gave me his card, told me to call if I ever needed anything. She frowned. I remember thinking it was strange, since he didn't seem military. Do you still have the card? Sarah shook her head. I lost track of it during the move to Arizona. But his name was Lawrence something. Carlisle? Carlton? Lawrence Carrington? Reynolds asked sharply. Sarah snapped her fingers. That's it. How did you know? Because Lawrence Carrington is Deputy Director of Special Activities at the CIA, Reynolds said quietly. And he shouldn't have been anywhere near a routine military funeral for a technical sergeant. Sarah felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. The CIA was involved in this operation? Not officially, Reynolds said. At least, not that I was told. He rubbed his face, looking tired. This goes deeper than I thought. So what do we do now? Sarah asked. We need to be careful, Reynolds warned. If people went to these lengths to cover something up, they won't hesitate to protect their secret. Sarah straightened her shoulders. I've spent 5 years believing my brother died a hero. If there's even a chance he's still alive, or that something happened that's being covered up, I need to know. Reynolds studied her with newfound respect. I can see the family resemblance. Your brother had that same look when he was determined to solve a problem. So you'll help me? Sarah asked. I have 3 weeks before I need to report to my next assignment, Reynolds replied. But we'll need to keep this quiet. No discussing it on base or over phones. Sarah nodded, then froze as a thought struck her. Wait, if someone switched the bracelets, that means they had access to both Michael's personal effects and the task force identification. That's not just anyone. Exactly, Reynolds agreed. It would have to be someone with high-level clearance and direct involvement in the operation. Or someone following orders from such a person, Sarah added. Reynolds checked his watch. We should go. Being seen together too long might raise questions. As they stood to leave, Sarah noticed the nearby booth was now empty. Something about it bothered her, but she couldn't place why. Outside in the parking lot, Reynolds handed her a small flip phone. Burner phone. My number's already programmed in. Don't use your regular phone to contact me about any of this. Sarah took it, suddenly feeling the weight of what they were undertaking. I have access to the base archives through my security clearance. I can check personnel records, see if any of Michael's team members are still stationed here. Good thinking, Reynolds said. I'll see what I can find out about who was really running that operation. We'll meet again in 2 days, same time, but at the Desert View Park instead. As Sarah drove home to her small apartment on the outskirts of Tucson, her mind whirled with questions. The brother she'd idolized might still be alive. Or he might have died under circumstances so sensitive that the government had fabricated an elaborate cover story. Either way, she was now involved in something far bigger and more dangerous than she'd ever anticipated. Her apartment felt especially empty that night. Sarah pulled out the box of Michael's things she kept in her closet, photos, letters, his favorite book of poetry. Among them was the official letter of condolence, signed by commanders she'd never met. Had they known the truth? Had anyone? Sarah slept fitfully, dreams filled with explosions and faceless men in suits. She woke before dawn, determined to begin her search for answers. At the base, she maintained her regular routine, not wanting to attract attention. During her lunch break, she visited the personnel archives, using her clearance to access records from 5 years ago. What she found, or rather, didn't find, sent a chill down her spine. According to the official records, Michael Mitchell had never been deployed to Kandahar. His last assignment was listed as Bagram Air Base, with no record of any special operations or temporary assignments. Even more disturbing, when she searched for deaths recorded during the week Michael had supposedly died, there was no spike in casualties, no record of a transport being hit by an IED. It was as if the entire incident had been erased from official records. Sarah was so engrossed in her search that she didn't notice Major Collins enter the records room until he spoke directly behind her. Technical Sergeant Mitchell. Unusual place for weapons maintenance personnel to spend their lunch hour. Sarah quickly closed the files and stood at attention. Just researching some old maintenance protocols, sir. For the A-10 cannon systems. Major Collins's eyes narrowed slightly. I understood you were the expert on those systems, Mitchell. Always more to learn, sir, Sarah replied evenly. Indeed. The major glanced at the computer screen, now showing only the main database menu. I heard you had a visitor yesterday. Navy, wasn't it? Sarah kept her expression neutral. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds. He was interested in the A-10's capabilities. Said it had helped his team in Afghanistan. Major Collins seemed to be weighing her response. Well, don't let your extracurricular research interfere with your primary duties. Colonel Harrington wants all aircraft ready for the training exercise next week. Yes, sir. Won't be a problem, sir. After Major Collins left, Sarah released the breath she'd been holding. His appearance felt too coincidental. Had someone already noticed her inquiries? Or was she becoming paranoid? Back at the hangar, Sarah found a young airman waiting by her toolbox. Technical Sergeant Mitchell. This came for you. He handed her a base mail envelope. Inside was a folded note with just 3 words, "Stop looking now." Sarah crumpled the note in her fist, a mix of fear and anger rising in her chest. Someone was watching her. But instead of frightening her off, the warning only strengthened her resolve. If someone wanted her to stop looking, it meant there was definitely something to find. That evening, as Sarah drove home, she noticed a dark sedan following at a distance. It maintained the same gap through several turns, confirming her suspicions. Rather than leading them to her apartment, Sarah drove to a crowded shopping mall, parked, and walked briskly through the busiest areas before slipping out a side entrance and calling a taxi. Back home, with her curtains drawn and doors locked, Sarah used the burner phone Reynolds had given her. "We need to meet sooner," she said when he answered. "I found something, or rather, nothing. And now I'm being followed." "Where are you?" Reynolds asked, his voice tense. "Home, for now. But I don't think it's safe anymore. Pack a bag, essentials only. I'll pick you up in 30 minutes. Don't turn on any lights, and stay away from the windows." As Sarah packed a small duffel bag, her hand brushed against Michael's bracelet on her wrist. "I'm going to find out what happened to you," she whispered. "I promise." What she didn't know was how that promise would change her life forever, or that the truth about her brother was far more complicated, and dangerous, than she could possibly imagine. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds pulled up in a nondescript rental car, keeping the headlights off as he approached Sarah's apartment complex. Sarah was waiting in the shadows, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. She slipped into the passenger seat without a word. "Anyone follow you home?" Reynolds asked, pulling away carefully. "Black sedan. Lost them at the mall, but they could have found me again," Sarah replied, scanning the rearview mirror anxiously. Reynolds drove in silence for several minutes, taking a circuitous route through residential neighborhoods before heading toward the outskirts of Tucson. "Where are we going?" Sarah finally asked. "Safe house of sorts," Reynolds answered. "Friend of mine owns a hunting cabin up in the mountains. Isolated, defensible. We can regroup there." Sarah nodded, clutching her bag tightly. "I found something today. Or rather, didn't find something." "What's that?" "According to official records, my brother was never in Kandahar. His last assignment was Bagram Air Base." Sarah swallowed hard. "And there's no record of any transport being hit by an IED the week he supposedly died." Reynolds's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "They've sanitized the records. That confirms this was no ordinary operation. And I got a warning note," Sarah added. "Stop looking now." Pretty direct. "Someone's nervous," Reynolds observed. "That's actually good news, means there's something to find." The drive took nearly 2 hours, winding up into the Santa Catalina Mountains. The cabin sat in a small clearing, surrounded by pine trees and boulders. It looked rustic and weathered, perfect for staying off the radar. Inside was basic but comfortable, 2 small bedrooms, a main room with a stone fireplace, and a kitchenette. Reynolds checked the perimeter before bringing in their bags. "Solar panels for limited power, rainwater collection system, propane for cooking," he explained. "My buddy uses it for hunting trips, but it works just as well for lying low." Sarah stood at the window, looking out at the moonlit forest. "I never thought I'd be hiding out like a fugitive," she said quietly. "All because I asked questions about my own brother." "If it helps, I believe you're doing the right thing," Reynolds said, setting up a laptop on the wooden table. "Your brother was a good man. He deserves the truth." Sarah turned to face him. "You knew him well?" Reynolds's expression softened. "Not as well as I would have liked. But we worked together for 3 weeks before that final mission. He talked about his family a lot, especially his little sister who followed him into the Air Force." Sarah smiled sadly. He never mentioned anything unusual in his letters or calls home. Just the normal stuff, the heat, missing decent food, funny stories about his buddies. He wouldn't have been able to, Reynolds explained. The operations he was involved in were strictly classified. Sarah sat across from him at the table. So what's our next move? I've got a contact, former intelligence, now retired, Reynolds said. I sent him a message before picking you up. If anyone can help us access the real records, it's him. Can we trust him? As much as we can trust anyone right now, Reynolds answered honestly. He owes me a favor from way back, and he's no fan of government cover-ups. Sarah nodded, then reached into her duffel bag and pulled out a worn leather notebook. This was Michael's. It came back with his things. I've read it dozens of times, looking for some clue, some hint that he was involved in something bigger. Reynolds took the journal carefully. May I? Please. Maybe you'll see something I missed. While Reynolds paged through the journal, Sarah prepared a simple meal from the supplies they'd brought. Her mind kept returning to the warning note. Someone at the base knew what she was doing, possibly the same someone who had been watching her at the restaurant. Sarah, Reynolds called suddenly. Look at this. He pointed to a page filled with what appeared to be random doodles, geometric shapes, numbers, lines connecting different points. What am I looking at? Sarah asked. It looks like random sketching, but Michael was using a basic field cipher, Reynolds explained. See how these shapes repeat? And these numbers alongside? Sarah leaned closer. I always thought he was just bored during briefings. He was encoding information, Reynolds said, excitement creeping into his voice. Probably couldn't write anything explicitly, so he developed his own system. Can you decode it? Not easily, but I recognize some patterns similar to what we used in the field. Reynolds flipped through more pages. There are dozens of these throughout. If we can crack his system, we might find what he was really working on. They spent the next several hours analyzing the journal, making notes, looking for patterns. By midnight, they had identified several recurring symbols and possible meanings. I think these triangles represent locations, Reynolds suggested. And the numbers might be dates or coordinates. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. What about these circles with the dots inside? Personnel, maybe. Different positions of the dots could indicate different roles or ranks. As they worked, Sarah felt a growing connection to her brother. Even in death, or disappearance, he was leaving them clues, breadcrumbs to follow. We should get some rest, Reynolds finally suggested. Fresh eyes in the morning. Sarah nodded reluctantly. I'll take the couch. No, you take the bedroom. I'll keep watch for a while. In the small bedroom, Sarah lay awake, Michael's bracelet cool against her skin. The events of the past 2 days played through her mind like a surreal movie. Had her brother really been involved in covert operations? Was he possibly still alive? And if so, why had his death been faked? She must have eventually drifted off, because the next thing she knew, Reynolds was shaking her awake. Sarah, get up. Someone's here. Instantly alert, Sarah rolled out of bed, still fully dressed. Who? Vehicle approaching. No headlights. Reynolds handed her a pistol. You know how to use this? Sarah checked the weapon with practiced ease. Air Force trains everyone on basic firearms. Reynolds nodded approvingly. Stay low, away from windows. Could be nothing, but... Better safe than sorry, Sarah finished. They moved silently through the cabin, taking positions with clear views of the approach. The vehicle, an SUV from what Sarah could make out in the pre-dawn light, stopped about 50 yards from the cabin. One person, Reynolds whispered. Moving cautiously. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched a figure approach, tall, male, moving with military precision. Reynolds suddenly relaxed slightly. It's Donovan, he said. My contact. Sarah kept her weapon ready nonetheless as Reynolds moved to the door. A coded knock followed, and Reynolds opened the door to admit a lean, gray-haired man in hiking gear. "Hell of a place for a rendezvous, Reynolds," the man said, stepping inside. "Had to go off-grid," Reynolds replied. "Sarah, this is James Donovan. Former CIA field operative, current pain in the government's ass." Donovan nodded to Sarah. "Technical Sergeant Mitchell. You look like your brother." Sarah lowered her weapon slowly. "You knew Michael?" "Not personally," Donovan clarified. "But I've been looking into the operation where he supposedly died." He set a weathered backpack on the table. "And what I found isn't pretty." From the backpack, Donovan produced a laptop and several files. "These are copies, so we don't have long before someone realizes they've been accessed." "What did you find?" Sarah asked, moving closer. "Operation Blackstone," Donovan said, opening the first file. "A joint CIA military operation targeting not just terrorists, but a multinational bioweapons research team using Afghanistan as their testing ground." "That matches what I knew," Reynolds confirmed. "What you didn't know," Donovan continued, "is that the operation was compromised from the inside. Someone tipped off the targets. That's why the facility was heavily guarded when your team arrived." Reynolds's expression darkened. "We lost good men because of that." "It gets worse," Donovan said grimly. "After the evacuation, there was a secondary operation, classified above your clearance. Code name, Phoenix Protocol." "What was that?" Sarah asked. "A contingency plan for when an operation is compromised by a suspected mole," Donovan explained. "Selected personnel are extracted, given new identities, and reassigned to flush out the traitor." Sarah's breath caught. "And my brother?" Donovan opened another file, turning the laptop so they could see. On the screen was a medical report dated 3 days after Michael's supposed death, detailing treatments for blast injuries, alive, but in serious condition. "He survived," Sarah whispered, hope and anger warring in her voice. "They lied to us. To my family." "There's more," Donovan said, hesitating. "The Phoenix Protocol involved a serious risk. The selected personnel had to appear to have died. Families were not informed because absolute secrecy was essential. So they let us believe he was dead for 5 years." Sarah demanded. "How is that justifiable?" "It's not," Reynolds said quietly. "But I've seen similar protocols enacted. The reasoning is that genuine grief from families helps sell the cover story." "That's monstrous," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Agreed," Donovan replied. "But effective. According to these records, your brother was given a new identity and tasked with infiltrating the network that had compromised the original operation." "Is he?" Sarah could barely form the question. "Is he still alive?" Donovan's expression grew troubled. "That's where the trail goes cold. His last confirmed status report was 18 months ago. After that, nothing." Sarah sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Her brother had survived, been forced into a new identity, and sent on an even more dangerous mission, all while his family grieved his loss. "Why would someone warn me off now?" she asked. "After all this time?" "Because something's happening," Donovan suggested. "The Phoenix operation might be reaching a critical point, or Michael might have gone off-grid himself," Reynolds finished. "Maybe he's trying to come in from the cold, and someone doesn't want that to happen." Sarah straightened, a new determination filling her. "Then we need to find him before they do." "That won't be easy," Donovan warned. "Your brother's been operating under deep cover for years. He could be anywhere, using any name. But we have an advantage they don't know about," Sarah said, touching her bracelet. "We have his journal, and we're starting to crack his code." Reynolds nodded. "If Michael wanted to leave himself an escape route, or a way to contact his family, it would be in there." They spent the morning poring over the journal with renewed purpose, now looking specifically for anything that might indicate locations or contact protocols. Donovan's intelligence background proved invaluable in recognizing certain patterns. These could be dead drop locations, he suggested, pointing to a series of markings. Standard espionage technique: leave information at a predetermined spot for another person to retrieve. And these dates, Sarah added, excitement building. They follow a pattern, first Friday of every third month. Reynolds checked the calendar on his phone. That would make the next date, next Friday. We need to figure out which location corresponds to that date, Donovan said. As they worked, Sarah felt a mixture of hope and anger. Hope that her brother might be alive, might have been trying to find a way back to his family. Anger at the system that had used him, used them all, so callously. Their concentration was broken by the distant sound of helicopter rotors. Reynolds was immediately on alert. That's not a civilian aircraft. Donovan moved to the window. Military. Black Hawk. And it's heading straight for us. How did they find us? Sarah asked, gathering the journal and files. Could be anything, Reynolds said grimly. Cell phone signals, satellite surveillance, or someone followed me, Donovan finished. I was careful, but these people have resources. We need to move, Reynolds decided. There's a trail behind the cabin that leads deeper into the forest. If we can reach the old mining roads, we might lose them. Sarah quickly packed the essential documents while Reynolds and Donovan gathered supplies. The sound of the helicopter grew louder. No time, Donovan warned. They're almost on us. Reynolds made a quick decision. Donovan, take Sarah and the documents out the back. I'll create a diversion. Jack, no, Sarah protested. We stay together. This isn't a debate, Sergeant, Reynolds said firmly. Your brother risked everything to leave these clues. You need to follow them through. Before Sarah could argue further, the helicopter appeared over the tree line. Reynolds pushed them toward the back door. Go. Now. Donovan grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward the forest trail. As they disappeared into the trees, Sarah looked back to see Reynolds stepping out onto the cabin porch, hands raised. Who is he surrendering to? She asked as they ran. Not surrendering, Donovan corrected grimly. Buying us time. Reynolds knows how to handle an interrogation, how to give them just enough to keep them busy without revealing the important stuff. They pushed deeper into the forest, the sound of the helicopter fading behind them. Sarah's military training helped her maintain pace, even on the rough terrain. Will they hurt him? She asked between breaths. Depends on who they are, Donovan replied honestly. If it's regular military, he'll be detained but treated according to regulations. If it's the people who've been running this cover-up. He didn't need to finish. Sarah understood the stakes had just risen dramatically. Reynolds had sacrificed himself to protect their mission, to protect her chance of finding her brother. We need to reach town, Donovan said as they paused for breath. I have another contact who can help us disappear properly. Sarah nodded, clutching Michael's journal to her chest. And then we follow my brother's trail. As they continued their flight through the mountain forest, Sarah made a silent vow. She would find her brother. She would expose the truth about what had happened. And she would make sure that those responsible for using them all as pawns in their secret games would face justice. Behind them, the distinctive thump of helicopter rotors faded, replaced by the wail of approaching sirens. The hunt was on. 3 days later, Sarah sat in a dingy motel room 50 miles outside of Phoenix, studying the pages of Michael's journal spread across the bed. Donovan had set her up with a temporary ID and enough cash to stay off the grid, but he'd had to separate from her to draw off potential pursuers. Follow the journal, he'd told her. I'll contact you at the rendezvous point on Thursday. The rendezvous point, that was what she was trying to determine now. Based on their decoding of Michael's cipher, they'd identified 3 possible locations for the dead drop scheduled for Friday. All were in different states, which meant she needed to choose correctly. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. No word from Reynolds since his capture at the cabin. The news had reported a joint military exercise in the area, but nothing about detainees. She could only hope he was okay. Her burner phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. Package delivered to Reynolds' residence. Condition stable. Phoenix rises. Sarah's heart raced. The message had to be from Donovan, using their agreed-upon code. Reynolds had been released or had escaped, and was somewhere safe. Phoenix rises suggested they should continue the mission. With renewed determination, Sarah returned to the journal. 3 potential locations, a post office box in San Diego, a storage unit in Dallas, or a locker at the Denver International Airport. Which one, Michael? She murmured. Where would you want me to go? She flipped back to the earliest entries, looking for any personal references that might offer a clue. Her brother had always loved puzzles and codes, even as children. He would have left something personal, something only she would recognize. There, a doodle in the margin, seemingly random but distinctly shaped like the mountain they had climbed together on her 16th birthday. The Rockies. Denver. Sarah quickly packed her few belongings. She would need to find transportation to Colorado without using her real ID or credit cards. The skills she developed maintaining complex aircraft systems were now being applied to an entirely different problem, staying invisible while hunting for the truth. 6 hours later, Sarah was on a Greyhound bus heading northeast, courtesy of her temporary identity as Alice Watson. The ID Donovan had provided was good enough for bus travel, though it wouldn't stand up to serious scrutiny. As the desert landscape gave way to mountains, Sarah reviewed what she knew. Her brother had survived the explosion in Kandahar. He'd been recruited into a deep cover operation to expose a traitor. And for some reason, 5 years later, people were very concerned about her discovering this truth. The bus stopped for a meal break at a roadside diner. As Sarah picked at a turkey sandwich, the television in the corner caught her attention. A news anchor was reporting on a security incident at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Sources say an unauthorized access of classified files prompted an investigation, the reporter explained. Air Force officials declined to comment on rumors that a weapons specialist may have been involved. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her heart pounded. They were making her sound like a traitor, perhaps laying groundwork to discredit her if she went public with what she'd learned. Back on the bus, Sarah tried to sleep, but her mind kept returning to the same questions. If Michael was alive, why hadn't he found a way to contact their family? What had he discovered that was so dangerous? And who was the traitor he'd been sent to expose? The Denver skyline appeared just after dawn. Sarah stepped off the bus into the cool morning air, immediately on alert for surveillance. The airport would be heavily monitored, which made her mission more dangerous, but she had little choice. She took a circuitous route, using public transportation and walking the last mile to avoid direct approaches. By mid-morning, she entered the vast terminal of Denver International Airport, just another traveler with a small backpack. According to Michael's journal, the locker would be in Concourse B, near Gate B32. Sarah purchased a cheap ticket for a short regional flight, allowing her through security. As she waited in the TSA line, she studied the officers, wondering if any had been alerted to watch for her. Once through security, Sarah made her way to Concourse B, moving casually but purposefully. The location proved to be a row of electronic lockers used by travelers to store belongings during layovers. Sarah checked her watch, 10:17 a.m. She had hours until the designated time of 3 p.m. Finding a cafe with a good view of the lockers, she ordered coffee and settled in to wait, watching for anyone showing unusual interest in the area. At 2:30, she noticed a janitor working near the lockers, taking longer than necessary to empty a nearby trash can. His movements seemed too precise, too aware. Not a real janitor, Sarah muttered to herself. Security, perhaps, or someone else watching for the same drop she was expecting. She needed to change tactics. If Michael had set up this system, he would have anticipated surveillance. There would be a backup plan. Sarah returned to the journal entry that had led her to Denver. Below the mountain doodle was a small sketch that looked like a coffee cup with the number 7 inside it. Sarah glanced around the concourse until she spotted it, Gate B7, with a coffee shop directly across from it. Her brother had always teased her about her coffee addiction. This was a message specifically for her. Moving casually, Sarah made her way to the new location. The coffee shop was busy with afternoon travelers. She ordered a latte and took a seat facing the gate. At precisely 3 p.m., a cleaning crew arrived to tidy the seating area. As one of the cleaners wiped down a table near Sarah, she accidentally knocked a magazine to the floor. "Sorry about that," the cleaner said, bending to retrieve it. When she placed the magazine back on the table, Sarah noticed something underneath, a small envelope that hadn't been there before. The cleaner moved on without making eye contact. Sarah waited several minutes before casually picking up the magazine with the envelope and placing both in her backpack. Heart racing, she finished her coffee and made her way to a family restroom where she could have privacy. Inside the envelope was a USB drive and a handwritten note, S. Trust no one in uniform. Meeting compromised. Blue Bear Cafe, Idaho Springs, tomorrow noon. Come alone. Sparrow. Sarah stared at the note. Sparrow had been her childhood nickname, given by their father because she was always flitting about. Only her family knew that name. The USB drive would have to wait until she found a secure computer. For now, she needed to get to Idaho Springs, a small town in the mountains west of Denver. As Sarah exited the restroom, she noticed two men in plain clothes studying the departures board too intently, their posture screaming military despite their civilian clothes. She took a roundabout path toward the exit, using groups of travelers as cover. Outside, she caught a shuttle to a nearby hotel, but didn't go in. Instead, she walked to a car rental agency a block away. Using her temporary ID, she rented a modest sedan and headed west on I-70. Idaho Springs was about an hour away, a former mining town now popular with tourists heading to the ski resorts. Sarah checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town, paying cash for one night. In her room, she finally felt secure enough to examine the USB drive. Her laptop had been left behind at the cabin, so she would need to find another computer. The motel's business center was too public, too likely to be monitored. Sarah walked to a nearby electronics store and purchased a cheap laptop with cash. Back in her room, she disconnected from the Wi-Fi before inserting the USB drive. The drive contained a single encrypted file. Sarah tried several possible passwords based on family references, finally succeeding with Tinker Sparrow 65, a combination of their nicknames and their father's service number. The file opened to reveal a series of documents and photographs. Sarah gasped as she scrolled through them. They detailed a massive weapons smuggling operation run by senior military officials, using classified operations as cover. The bioweapons research facility in Kandahar had been just one piece of a larger puzzle. Most shocking were the names implicated, including Colonel Victor Harrington, her commanding officer at Davis-Monthan. "Oh, Michael," Sarah whispered. "What did you get yourself into?" Among the files was a personal message. If you're reading this, I've missed our meeting or something's gone wrong. I've been undercover tracking a weapons smuggling network within our own military. The Kandahar operation was compromised because I discovered Harrington's involvement. They tried to kill me to keep it quiet, then recruited me thinking I knew nothing. I've spent years gathering evidence. Almost have enough to go public. Watch for me at Blue Bear. If I don't show, take this to James Donovan, he can be trusted. Love you, sis. M. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. Her brother was alive. He'd been fighting this corruption from the inside all these years, unable to contact his family for fear of exposing them to danger. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the Blue Bear Cafe an hour early, selecting a table with a clear view of both the entrance and the back exit. She ordered coffee and a muffin she couldn't eat, her stomach tight with anticipation and fear. At precisely noon, a man entered wearing a baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses, and a gray jacket. He was thinner than she remembered, with a beard now streaked with gray despite being only 36. But Sarah would know her brother anywhere. Michael scanned the room carefully before making eye contact with her. A flash of recognition, then caution. He took a circuitous route to her table, checking each patron as he passed. "The blueberries are particularly good this season," he said as he sat down, a verification code from their childhood. "But the blackberries make better pies," Sarah replied, completing the exchange. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, 5 years of separation stretching between them. "You got my message," Michael finally said, his voice hoarse. "Only by accident," Sarah replied. "Your SEAL friend recognized my bracelet." Michael's eyes widened. "Reynolds? He wasn't supposed to be stateside yet." "He recognized the bracelet you gave me, or rather, the one that was returned with your effects," Sarah explained. Michael frowned. "I wasn't wearing that bracelet during the operation. I was wearing a task force identifier." "We figured that out," Sarah said. "Someone switched them to sell your death story." Michael nodded grimly. "Harrington. He's been running this operation for years, using special ops as cover for weapons movement. When I stumbled onto it in Kandahar, they tried to eliminate me." "But then they recruited you?" Sarah asked, confused. "They thought I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time," Michael explained. "The explosion was meant to kill me and destroy evidence. When I survived, Harrington saw an opportunity. He rescued me, convinced his superiors I'd be valuable for the Phoenix Protocol, and had me assigned to infiltrate the very network he was running." "So you've been gathering evidence against him all this time?" Michael nodded. "Almost have enough for the Justice Department to act. But Harrington's getting suspicious. When he heard about Reynolds asking questions and you accessing old records, he panicked." "Reynolds was captured," Sarah told him. "At a cabin in the mountains 3 days ago." Michael's expression darkened. "Harrington will try to find out what he knows. We need to move fast." He reached into his jacket and produced a small data card. "This contains everything: shipping manifests, bank transfers, communications. Enough to bring down the entire network." "We should get this to Donovan," Sarah suggested. "No." Michael's response was immediate. "Donovan works for Harrington." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "But he helped us. He provided information about the Phoenix Protocol." "Information that led you exactly where they wanted," Michael said grimly. "They've been playing you, trying to draw me out. That's why I changed the meeting location. The original drop was compromised." Sarah's mind raced. If Donovan is working with Harrington, then Reynolds is in serious danger, Michael finished. "We need to get this evidence to someone we can trust, and we need to do it now." "Who can we trust?" Sarah asked. Michael thought for a moment. "There's a Justice Department lawyer in Denver, Elaine Mathers. She's been investigating military corruption independently. She doesn't know about me specifically, but she's been tracking the weapons movements." As they spoke, Sarah noticed a black SUV pull up outside. 2 men in suits emerged, scanning the street. "We've got company," she warned quietly. Michael glanced over his shoulder. "Back exit. Now." They moved quickly through the kitchen, ignoring the protests of the staff. Behind the cafe was an alley leading to a residential street. "My car's this way," Sarah said, pointing left. "Too risky," Michael countered. "They'll be watching for it." He pointed to a motorcycle parked nearby. That's my ride. Within moments, they were speeding away from Idaho Springs on Michael's motorcycle, taking the winding mountain roads that would make pursuit difficult. Sarah held tight to her brother, still hardly believing he was real, alive, warm beneath her hands. They needed to reach Denver, deliver the evidence, and somehow help Reynolds, all while evading Harrington's people and possibly Donovan. The odds seemed overwhelming. But for the first time in 5 years, Sarah and Michael were together. And together, the Mitchell siblings had always been a force to be reckoned with. As they rounded a curve, a helicopter appeared over the ridge ahead, black, unmarked, and heading straight for them. "Hold on!" Michael shouted, veering off the main road onto a Forest Service track. The final confrontation was coming, faster than either of them had anticipated. And the truth about Michael's mission, about the betrayal at the highest levels of military command, was about to explode into the open. The Forest Service road narrowed dangerously, winding through dense pine trees. The helicopter circled above, momentarily losing sight of them beneath the canopy. "They're hurting us," Michael shouted over the roar of the motorcycle. "Main road will be blocked ahead." Sarah tightened her grip around her brother's waist. "What's the plan?" "Contingency route." "Hold on." Michael veered suddenly onto an even narrower trail, barely visible among the underbrush. The motorcycle bucked and slid on the rough terrain. Sarah could hear the helicopter adjusting course, trying to relocate them. "Where does this lead?" Sarah called out. "Old mining complex. Underground tunnels." Michael responded, his focus intense as he navigated the treacherous path. The trail emerged into a small clearing where a dilapidated wooden structure stood, the entrance to an abandoned mine. Michael killed the engine and they dismounted quickly. "They'll have thermal imaging," Sarah warned, her Air Force training kicking in. Michael nodded. "That's why we're going underground." He pulled a small backpack from the motorcycle's storage compartment. "Always have an escape route planned." Inside the backpack were flashlights, water, and basic survival gear. Michael led the way into the mine entrance, the rotted timbers creaking ominously above them. "These tunnels connect to an old processing facility about 2 miles from here," Michael explained as they moved deeper into the darkness. "From there, we can reach an access road that leads back to the highway." Sarah clicked on her flashlight. "You've scouted all this?" "5 years of planning escape routes does that to you," Michael replied with a grim smile. "Paranoia becomes a lifestyle." The sound of the helicopter faded as they proceeded deeper into the earth. The tunnel was damp and cold, with occasional side passages branching off into impenetrable darkness. "How's Mom?" Michael asked suddenly, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. The question caught Sarah off guard. "She's managing. Still in Tennessee. Keeps your room exactly as you left it." Michael was silent for a moment. "I've thought about her every day. About all of you. Wondering if I made the right choice, staying dead all this time." "You were protecting us," Sarah said, understanding now. "If Harrington knew you were gathering evidence against him, he would have used you all as leverage," Michael finished. "It was safer if everyone, including his people, believed I was working for them completely." They walked in silence for several minutes, the weight of 5 lost years hanging between them. "That bracelet," Michael said finally. "I put it in my locker before the mission. How did it end up with my remains?" "Someone who had access to both your personal effects and the task force identifiers," Sarah reasoned. "Someone setting up your cover story." "Harrington himself," Michael confirmed. "He orchestrated the whole thing. The irony is, his plan to use me as an inside man in his own operation gave me the perfect cover to investigate him." The tunnel widened into a larger chamber filled with rusted mining equipment. Michael paused, consulting a small map from his pack. "East tunnel should lead toward the processing facility," he said, pointing to a passage on their right. As they started toward it, Sarah placed a hand on his arm. "Michael, What happens after we deliver the evidence? You've been legally dead for 5 years. Michael's expression was solemn in the flashlight's beam. Best case. I testify, Harrington and his network go down, and I get a new identity through witness protection. Worst case. He shrugged. I stay dead, but at least the truth comes out. That's not acceptable, Sarah said firmly. You're coming home. Mom deserves that. We all do. Michael smiled sadly. Always the determined one. A distant rumble interrupted them, not the helicopter, but something else. The ground beneath them vibrated slightly. They're bringing in ground teams, Michael warned. Probably ATVs. We need to move faster. They hurried through the east tunnel, which gradually sloped upward. After nearly 30 minutes of brisk walking, they saw daylight ahead, the tunnel opening into another clearing where the remains of a processing facility stood, half reclaimed by nature. Michael signaled for caution as they approached the exit. Let me check first. He crept forward, peering carefully around the tunnel entrance. After a moment, he waved Sarah forward. Clear for now, but we need to move quickly. The access road is beyond those trees. As they crossed the clearing, staying low among the rusted equipment, Sarah's burner phone vibrated. She pulled it out to see a text message. Reynolds escaped. Harrington furious. Watch for Donovan. He's hunting you. Unknown. Sarah showed the message to Michael. Could be a trap, she warned. Or it could be someone inside Harrington's organization who's sympathetic, Michael countered. Either way, we know Reynolds is loose, which complicates things for them. They reached the tree line without incident and found the narrow access road beyond. It was little more than a dirt track, clearly unused for years. It's about 5 miles to the highway, Michael said. Too exposed to use the motorcycle, so we walk. They set a quick pace along the road, staying close to the trees for cover. Sarah kept scanning their surroundings, the skills honed during her military training now serving a purpose she never could have anticipated. The evidence, Sarah said as they walked. Will it be enough? Michael nodded. Shipping manifests for weapons that officially don't exist. Bank transfers to known terrorist facilitators. Orders signed by Harrington himself diverting military resources. It's comprehensive. And Reynolds? How does he fit into this? He was part of the SEAL team that extracted me from Kandahar, Michael explained. He didn't know about the Phoenix Protocol or Harrington's involvement. Just an honest soldier who happened to recognize your bracelet and started asking the wrong questions. They had covered about 2 miles when the distant sound of engines reached them. Michael pulled Sarah into the underbrush just as 2 black SUVs appeared around a bend in the road ahead. Harrington's men, Michael whispered. They've figured out where the tunnel exits. The vehicles stopped about 100 yards away. Men in tactical gear emerged, carrying assault rifles. 6 of them, Sarah counted. Too many to take on directly. Michael nodded in agreement. We need to circle back, find another route. As they prepared to retreat deeper into the forest, a voice called out from behind them. That would be unwise, Technical Sergeant Mitchell. Both of you. Sarah and Michael turned slowly to find James Donovan standing 10 yards away, a pistol held steadily in their direction. Donovan, Sarah said coldly. Michael told me you work for Harrington. Donovan's expression remained neutral. Is that what he told you? Interesting theory. Michael moved slightly, positioning himself partially in front of Sarah. Drop the act, Donovan. Your men are up ahead. You've been tracking us since Idaho Springs. Those aren't my men, Donovan replied calmly. And if I wanted to capture you, I would have done so at the Blue Bear Cafe. Sarah studied the former CIA operative carefully. Then whose men are they? Harrington's private security team, Donovan answered. Former special forces, now mercenaries. They're here to eliminate both of you and recover whatever evidence you've collected. Michael remained skeptical. And you're here to help? After leading them to us? I've been working this case for 3 years, Donovan said, lowering his weapon slightly. Ever since certain weapons started appearing in conflict zones, weapons that were supposed to be decommissioned. Prove it, Sarah demanded. Donovan reached slowly into his jacket and removed a leather credential wallet. He tossed it to them. Michael caught it and opened it to reveal a Justice Department badge and ID. Special Investigator, Justice Department Task Force on Military Corruption, he read aloud. My CIA background was real, Donovan explained. But I've been with Justice for the past 5 years. Harrington doesn't know, he thinks I'm just a private contractor he occasionally hires. So at the cabin. Sarah began. I was genuinely helping you, Donovan confirmed. But I had to maintain my cover with Harrington's people. When they captured Reynolds, I had to appear to be cooperating with them. Reynolds escaped? Michael asked. Donovan nodded. With some help. He's safe, but Harrington is desperate now. He knows too many people are asking questions. The sound of men's voices carried from up ahead. Harrington's team was beginning to spread out, searching the area. We need to move, Donovan urged. I have a vehicle hidden half a mile west of here. The evidence first, Michael insisted, removing the data card from a hidden pocket. If something happens to us, this needs to reach Elaine Mathers at the Denver Justice Department office. Donovan examined the data card. This is everything. Enough to put Harrington and at least 12 other senior officers away for life, Michael confirmed. Weapons smuggling, collaboration with terrorist organizations, misappropriation of military resources, and murder. Donovan carefully secured the card in a waterproof case. Let's make sure it gets there, along with both of you. They moved quietly through the forest, paralleling the road but staying well hidden. Sarah kept glancing at her brother, still hardly believing he was really beside her after all these years. How did you find us? Michael asked Donovan as they walked. I didn't, Donovan admitted. Reynolds did. After he escaped, he contacted me through back channels. Said if I was really on the level, I should meet him at a diner in Denver. He had figured out that you'd changed the dead drop location. Smart man, Michael commented. He's waiting for us with local FBI agents I've worked with before, Donovan explained. People I know aren't compromised by Harrington's network. They reached Donovan's vehicle, a rugged jeep hidden under camouflage netting in a dense stand of trees. After quickly uncovering it, they piled in, Donovan driving while Michael rode shotgun and Sarah in the back. We'll take forest roads for the first 10 miles, Donovan explained as they bounced along a rough track. Then connect with Highway 70 well past their search area. Sarah kept watch behind them, alert for pursuit. Harrington himself, will he be arrested too? He's the primary target, Donovan confirmed. The evidence your brother has collected should be enough for an indictment. From there, we'll see who else it brings down. Michael was silent for a long moment. 5 years, he said finally. 5 years of living under a false name, pretending to be someone I'm not, all while the real criminals wore uniforms and received honors. It ends today, Sarah assured him, placing a hand on his shoulder. One way or another. As they emerged onto a paved road, Donovan's satellite phone rang. His expression grew serious as he listened. Change of plans, he announced after hanging up. Harrington's at the Denver Justice Department office right now, meeting with the district attorney. He's trying to get ahead of this somehow. Or he's setting a trap, Michael warned. Either way, we need to be there, Sarah insisted. If he's trying to spin this, we need to present the evidence directly. Donovan nodded grimly and accelerated onto the highway toward Denver. The miles passed in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts about what was to come. 2 hours later, they pulled into the parking garage beneath the federal building in downtown Denver. Reynolds was waiting for them by the elevator, his face showing signs of rough treatment but his eyes alert and determined. "Mitchell," he said, nodding to Michael. "Thought you were dead." "That was the idea," Michael replied with a slight smile. "Heard you stirred up quite a hornet's nest because of my sister's bracelet." Reynolds glanced at Sarah. "Worth it. Crooked officers have no place in our military." "Harrington still upstairs with the DA," Donovan reported after checking his phone. "Sixth floor conference room. Local FBI are standing by, but they won't move without hard evidence." "Then let's deliver it," Sarah said firmly. The elevator ride was silent, each preparing in their own way for the confrontation to come. When the doors opened on the sixth floor, they were met by an FBI agent who quickly escorted them down the hallway. "They're still in there," the agent reported quietly. Harrington brought 2 JAG officers with him. "They're claiming national security concerns over some pending investigation." "Convenient," Reynolds muttered. They paused outside the conference room door. Through the glass panels, Sarah could see several people seated around a large table. At the far end sat Colonel Victor Harrington, looking confident and completely at ease. "Ready?" Donovan asked, his hand on the door. Michael took a deep breath. 5 years. They entered the room together. The conversation inside stopped abruptly as all eyes turned toward them. The district attorney, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, frowned at the interruption. The 2 JAG officers looked confused. But Colonel Harrington's reaction was the most telling, pure shock, quickly masked by military composure. "What is the meaning of this?" the DA demanded. "Elaine Mathers?" Donovan asked, stepping forward and presenting his credentials. "Special Investigator James Donovan, Justice Department Task Force on Military Corruption. We have evidence directly relevant to your current discussion." Mathers examined his credentials carefully. "Go on." "I believe Colonel Harrington is attempting to quash an investigation by claiming national security concerns," Donovan continued. "What you need to know is that Colonel Harrington himself is the subject of a 3-year federal investigation into weapons smuggling, conspiracy, and multiple counts of murder." One of the JAG officers stood up. "These are serious allegations that should be properly." "Technical Sergeant Michael Mitchell," Michael interrupted, stepping forward. "Officially declared Kia 5 years ago in Afghanistan. In reality, I've been gathering evidence on Colonel Harrington's weapons smuggling operation since then." Harrington's composure cracked. "This is preposterous. Mitchell died in Kandahar. This man is an imposter." "DNA will confirm my identity," Michael said calmly. "As will my fingerprints, which are still on file with the Air Force." Sarah stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with her brother. "And I'm Technical Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, currently stationed at Davis-Monthan. Colonel Harrington has been using classified operations as cover for weapons smuggling for years. When my brother discovered this in Kandahar, Harrington tried to have him killed, then recruited him for deep cover, thinking he knew nothing." "This is absurd," Harrington sputtered, though a vein now pulsed visibly in his forehead. "These people have no authority to interrupt this meeting." "Perhaps this will clarify matters," Donovan said, producing the data card. "Complete documentation of weapons shipments, bank transfers, communications, and orders signed by Colonel Harrington himself. 5 years of evidence gathered by a dead man." Mathers took the data card, her expression grave. "Colonel Harrington, I believe this meeting is adjourned pending review of this new evidence." Harrington stood, his face now flushed with anger. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. This goes beyond me, beyond all of you." "Save it for your testimony," Reynolds suggested coldly. "Maybe you can get a reduced sentence by naming names." The FBI agents entered, moving to either side of Harrington. "Colonel Victor Harrington, you're being detained pending charges of weapons trafficking, conspiracy, and murder," the lead agent stated formally. As Harrington was led from the room, he stopped briefly beside Sarah. "You should have left it alone, Mitchell," he said quietly. Some things are better left buried. Like my brother? Sarah replied, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. Not this time, sir. In the hours that followed, the evidence was verified, statements were taken, and the machinery of justice began to move. Michael's identity was confirmed through fingerprints and DNA comparison with Sarah. Arrest warrants were prepared for 12 other officers implicated in Harrington's network. By evening, Sarah and Michael sat alone in a quiet corner of the Federal Building cafeteria, both exhausted but unable to rest. What happens now? Sarah asked, her hands wrapped around a cup of cooling coffee. Michael looked thoughtful. Debriefings. Testimony. Probably a new identity for a while, until all of Harrington's people are rounded up. And after that? After that, Michael said with the first genuine smile she'd seen on his face, we go see Mom. Sarah reached across the table, taking her brother's hand. 5 years, Michael. She never gave up hope, you know. Even when everyone told her to accept it. Mitchell's stubbornness, Michael said fondly. Runs in the family. Reynolds and Donovan approached their table, both looking weary but satisfied. Thought you'd want to know, Reynolds said as he sat down. They found the weapons cache exactly where your evidence indicated. Enough firepower to supply a small army, all diverted from military inventory. And Harrington? Sarah asked. Talking, Donovan replied. Trying to make a deal. Says there are people above him, people who authorized the whole operation. Do you believe him? Michael asked. Donovan shrugged. Partially. Men like Harrington don't act entirely on their own. But how high it goes, that's what we need to find out. Will you testify? Reynolds asked Michael directly. Michael nodded without hesitation. Whatever it takes. It won't be easy, Donovan warned. Coming back from the dead never is. There will be inquiries, investigations into why you maintained your cover for so long. I'll handle it, Michael said confidently. I've been living with much worse for 5 years. As the men discussed the practical details of the coming investigation, Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. She opened it to find a breaking story. Major military scandal brewing, senior officer detained, weapons smuggling alleged. The truth was already beginning to emerge. Sarah showed the alert to the others. It's starting, she said quietly. And it won't stop until everyone involved is held accountable, Michael promised. No matter how high it goes. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood at attention on the tarmac at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. The A-10 Thunderbolt II gleamed in the Arizona sun as the base commander approached her, followed by a group of officers. Technical Sergeant Mitchell, the commander said formally. In recognition of your actions in uncovering a significant threat to national security, it is my honor to present you with the Airman's Medal for heroism involving voluntary risk of life. As the medal was pinned to her uniform, Sarah caught sight of her brother standing at the back of the assembled personnel. No longer officially dead, Michael was now a protected witness, his true identity restored though his appearance altered for safety. After the ceremony, they met privately in the commander's office. 17 arrests so far, Michael reported. 3 generals, 8 colonels, and various suppliers and middlemen. Harrington's testimony opened up everything. And the A-10’s? Sarah asked. Was I really just cleaning the cannon that day, or was there more to it? Michael smiled sadly. Those planes were scheduled for deployment to a forward base in Syria. The munitions you were maintaining had been secretly modified. When Reynolds recognized your bracelet, it disrupted their entire timetable. A coincidence that saved countless lives, Sarah reflected. Not coincidence, Michael corrected. I chose this base for my dead drop because I knew you were stationed here. I was hoping to find a way to contact you safely. Reynolds recognizing the bracelet just accelerated things. Later that evening, they stood together on the balcony of Sarah's apartment, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. "I fly to Washington tomorrow," Michael said. "More testimony. And then witness protection?" Sarah asked. Michael shook his head. "I've done enough hiding. Once the trials are over, I'm coming back, properly this time. New assignment, same name." "Mom will be thrilled," Sarah said, smiling. "She's already redecorating your room." They fell silent, watching an A-10 return from a training flight, its distinctive silhouette dark against the sunset sky. "You know," Sarah said thoughtfully, "when I was just cleaning that A-10's cannon, I never imagined where it would lead." "To the truth," Michael replied simply. "Which is all I ever wanted." The aircraft disappeared beyond the mountains, but its echo remained, a reminder of the machinery of war that had brought them both here, separated them, and ultimately reunited them in the pursuit of justice. Sarah touched the bracelet on her wrist, her brother's bracelet, now returned to her as a keepsake of their journey. What had begun with a SEAL officer noticing this simple band had unraveled a conspiracy, exposed corruption at the highest levels, and brought a dead man back to life. Sometimes, she reflected, the smallest things could change everything. A bracelet. A recognition. A question asked at just the right moment. And sometimes, justice was as simple as a sister refusing to believe her brother was truly gone, and a soldier refusing to let corruption wear the same uniform he had sworn to honor. The truth, once buried, had finally found the light.